How did a military funeral turn into a comedy show? It happened when we discovered what Master Sergeant Mike Davis had been doing in his spare time for the past 15 years. Davis was the most serious NCO I'd ever met. 22 years in the Army, ran our supply unit like a Swiss watch. Guy never smiled, never joked, never showed any personality beyond military regulations and proper procedures. When he died suddenly of a heart attack last month, the whole battalion was devastated. Davis had trained half the NCOs on our base. Tough but fair, everyone respected him even if nobody really knew him personally. The funeral was set for Arlington National Cemetery. Full military honors, honor guard, the works. Davis had earned it. Purple Heart from Afghanistan, Bronze Star, exemplary service record. His sister flew in from Oregon to handle arrangements. Day of the funeral, we're all in dress blues. Hundreds of soldiers, officers, family members. Solemn ceremony, everything proceeding perfectly. Honor guard presents the flag, 21 gun salute, bagpiper plays taps. Then came time for personal remarks. Davis's sister Amy walked to the podium. She looked nervous, clutching a piece of paper. Started talking about her brother's military service, his dedication to duty, standard funeral speech stuff. But then she said something that made everyone pause. Mike always told me his real passion wasn't the Army, it was making people laugh. We're all looking at each other confused. Making people laugh? This was Master Sergeant Davis we're talking about. Guy who wrote soldiers up for having untucked shirts. Amy continued reading. Every weekend for 15 years, Mike performed stand-up comedy at clubs around DC. He went by the stage name Sergeant Chuckles. Never told anyone at work because he was afraid it would hurt his military credibility. The entire cemetery went dead silent. Then Amy pulled out her phone. She said Mike had recorded hundreds of his performances and always hoped someday his Army friends could see his real personality. She started playing a video on the chapel's sound system. Suddenly we're watching Master Sergeant Davis on stage at some comedy club wearing civilian clothes, telling jokes about military life. His opening bit was about inspections. He's doing this perfect impression of a nervous private trying to explain why his room failed. Voice cracking, hands shaking, the whole thing. Crowd at the comedy club was dying laughing. Then he launched into material about military food, stupid regulations, officer behavior, stuff we all complained about privately but never heard an NCO joke about publicly. His delivery was perfect. Timing was incredible. The funeral audience started chuckling despite themselves. Here we are at Arlington Cemetery watching our dead sergeant do stand-up comedy about the Army. Situation was so surreal nobody knew how to react. Amy kept playing clips. Davis doing impressions of different types of soldiers. The boot camp know-it-all. The career private who never gets promoted. The lieutenant who reads regulations word for word. His impression of a drill sergeant was spot on. Same voice he used for real formations but exaggerated just enough to be hilarious. He had the gestures, the attitude, everything perfect. By the third video people were openly laughing. Colonels cracking up at jokes about officers. Enlisted guys losing it over his impression of a first sergeant having a meltdown over paperwork. Even the chaplain was smiling. This was supposed to be a solemn military funeral and it had turned into a comedy show featuring the guest of honor. Amy played one final clip. Davis talking about his day job, how much he loved being a soldier but needed an outlet for his creative side, how comedy helped him deal with the stress of military life. He ended that set by saying the Army taught him discipline, but laughter taught him joy. Both were necessary for a complete life. Classic Davis wisdom, delivered with perfect comic timing. After the videos ended, the mood had completely shifted. Instead of mourning a stern, humorless NCO, we were celebrating someone who'd secretly been bringing joy to people for 15 years. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, our battalion commander, approached the podium for closing remarks. Sir, I've served with Mike Davis for 8 years. Thought I knew him completely. Turns out I didn't know him at all. But after today, I understand why his soldiers were so loyal. He wasn't just teaching us military skills, he was teaching us balance. The reception afterward was unlike any military funeral I'd ever attended. Instead of quiet, respectful conversations, people were sharing their favorite Davis impressions from the videos. Sergeant Williams doing Davis's bit about motor pool maintenance. Captain Murphy attempting his impression of a confused lieutenant reading a map backwards. Amy set up a small memorial table with photos from Mike's comedy career, flyers from shows, audience photos, even a trophy from some amateur comedy competition he'd won. Last month, our unit established the Davis Comedy Night. Once a quarter, soldiers can perform stand-up material about military life. No rank during the show, everyone just cuts loose. First event was packed. Turns out we had a lot of closet comedians in our unit. Amy attended as guest of honor, sitting front row, laughing at every joke just like her brother would have wanted.